Hey, it's Chantelle from William Wood right here. In this video, I'm going to show you my method for painting brass tubes before gluing them into the blank, and how it makes a difference in the final look of your pen. When you're working with materials like acrylic, poly resin, or fusion blanks, there's usually some degree of transparency. Depending on the final diameter you turn the blank to, the brass tube can end up showing through, especially at the ends where the material tapers down to meet the bushings. This slimline pen was made with an acrylic blank and no paint on the tube, and you can really see how the brass affects the final appearance. The effect is even more noticeable with light-colored blanks. This Easy Line pen was done with white painted tubes. Without that base coat, the white pearl acrylic would have taken on a muddy yellowish cast. For this demo, I'm using an acrylic blank called Water Dragon. I'll be turning 3 barrels for comparison. One with white paint, one with blue paint, and one with no paint at all. I start by drilling out the blanks on the lathe using a drill chuck. I find this method gives more accuracy than a drill press. With acrylic, avoiding out-of-round gaps is especially important since even small inconsistencies can show through the blank. Painted tubes are not. Then I remove as much dust as possible from the hole I just drilled. Those little specks can cause bubbles in the glue that show through the blank. I use compressed air to blow the dust out. To get rid of any remaining debris, I use isopropyl alcohol on a lint-free swab. You can find 99% isopropyl alcohol in the first aid section of most drugstores. I get these swabs on Amazon. They're sold as electronic cleaning swabs, and they're perfect for this because they have long handles and don't leave lint behind like cotton swabs can. Next, I'm scuffing up the brass tubes to create a better surface for the paint and glue to adhere to. This creates more dust, so I like to wipe the tubes down with isopropyl alcohol as well. It evaporates quickly, just make sure the tube is fully dry before you start painting. To prevent paint and glue from getting inside the tubes, I plug the ends with base plate wax. This is a thin sheet of wax that is commonly used in the dental industry. You can also use Play-Doh or even a slice of raw potato, as long as it's something that's easy to remove later. Okay, so this is the method I've developed for painting tubes without messing up the paint job. This is a little medieval looking, but let me explain. I use these wood coffee stir sticks cut in half on an angle to stick into the wax at the end of the brass tube. That gives me a handle to hold onto and rotate the tube while painting without ever touching it. Once it's painted, I stick it into this foam block. It's just floral foam to dry. I use enamel spray paint for painting tubes. I find it's more durable than acrylic. It's harder, more chip resistant, and it adheres better to the brass. It also goes on smoother and more evenly, which makes it easier to build up thin, clean layers. Before aiming at the tube, I always test spray off to the side first to clear any gunk out of the nozzle so I don't splatter the tube with blobs of paint. When spraying, you want to aim for full coverage, but avoid thick coats and drips. The paint layer needs to stay thin so the tube still fits smoothly into the blank. Use light passes with the nozzle about 6 to 8 inches away and slowly rotate the tube as you go. If you find you need to do more than one coat of paint, make sure the first coat's dry before moving on to the next one. Then I stick the blanks back into my foam block and leave them to dry for 24 hours. For gluing painted tubes, I highly recommend using a 2-part epoxy instead of CA glue, since CA can sometimes dissolve cured paint. I'm using a 30-minute epoxy to give myself plenty of time to work before it starts to get gummy. I apply glue to both the inside of the drilled hole and the outside of the brass tube. Coating all surfaces helps avoid trapped air bubbles or dry spots, which can create a pressed bubble effect that shows through the blank. I like using the coffee stir stick for this too. The flat edge helps spread the epoxy evenly. Then I roll the tube in the same puddle of epoxy and insert it into the hole slowly with a twisting motion. Take your time here so you don't pull in any air. Once you've got the tube in, you can wipe off any excess epoxy from the ends with the finger of your glove. I'm gluing in the blue and white blanks in the exact same way. I'm just making sure to mix a new batch of epoxy for each blank. I want to avoid it getting gummy, and I want it to be liquidy enough that I can spread it evenly inside the hole and outside the blank. This way the epoxy will be runny enough to seep into all those little scratches on the tube or inside of the blank, anything porous that needs to be filled. With epoxy, I like to let it sit overnight to cure fully. Once it's cured, you can remove the wax plugs. Epoxy is tougher than CA, so you may have to use a hobby knife to get all the wax out of the ends. Square up the ends of the blanks as usual, making sure not to shorten the brass tubes. Then you can finally get your blanks on the lathe and start turning. I've got the white painted blank mounted on the tailstock and the blue one on the headstock end. You can already see the difference in how they're going to turn out. White paint brightens everything, while colored paint can be used to draw out and emphasize specific tones in the blank. In this case, the blue paint really boosts the blue areas. If I'd used green paint instead, the green would be the dominant color that stands out. Before starting the finishing process, I take the turned barrels off the mandrel and check the ends. On this one, I've got a small gap between the tube and the blank. During finishing, and especially wet sanding, debris can get trapped in those gaps and show through, making the ends look muddy. I use the end of my stir stick to clean out any dust or particles, then fill the gap with CA glue and hit it with accelerator before mounting it back on the lathe with finishing bushings. These non-stick finishing bushings are tapered and made from hard plastic. When you're working with wood and applying a hard finish like CA, metal bushings can stick to the ends and risk chipping the finish when you remove them. I also like using these for wet sanding, so I don't pull dark particles from the metal bushing into the wet sanding slurry and into the ends of the blank. I finish acrylic blanks with Novus No. 2 plastic polish. For the blank with no paint, I'm going to use the exact same turning and finishing process. You can already see how the raw brass gives the ends of the barrel a warmer, gold-toned appearance. Alright, here we are with all 3 blanks completed, and you can really see the difference the tube color makes with them all side by side. This is the one done without any paint. The brass is showing through, especially in the lighter blue areas along the barrel. It's most noticeable at the ends where the material is thinner and gives the whole blank a slightly warmer yellowish cast. This one was done with the blue paint, and you can see how it enhances the blue tones already in the blank. It adds a nice depth, especially in the white ribbon areas, which fade gradually into that rich blue background. It almost gives the blank a layered or dimensional look. And this is the one painted white. You can see how much brighter and more vibrant the whole blank looks. There's definitely more opacity compared to the blue one. That soft, pearly shimmer really shows up here, thanks to the light background. I find that white paint is also great for hiding any small flaws or uneven spots that might show through the blank. So here they all are side by side. Same blank, 3 completely different looks just by changing the tube color. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You can use any color, and if you like the look of the raw brass, you can do that too. It really comes down to personal preference and the effect you're going for. A little prep work can go a long way in getting the look you want. If you have any questions or tips and tricks of your own you'd like to share, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear what's worked for you. Thanks for watching, and if you found this helpful, feel free to like the video or subscribe for more pen turning tips and demos.